You've spelunked into the Mat Cave.
Hello, everybody. Welcome in, and thank you all so much for spelunking on by. This week, it's the post-mortem of championship weekend. Woof. Well, I'll get into it. I'm not going to spoil anything yet, but woof seems to be the right reaction there. I'll talk about men's basketball. That will be covered more on this program now that college football is essentially over. And more Utah Mammoth talk will be coming down the pipeline as well. And a video game review. I know it's been like a month and a half since I've done one, but I have one ready. So that's where we're at for this week's episode. Thank you all so much for being here and all of the interaction this past week. It was the most successful week ever on my Facebook page as far as like reactions, comments, interaction goes. So thank you all so much for that. It was really cool to see. And it was really cool to see, for the most part, everybody was pretty civil about it. Everybody had their own opinions, which is fine. Share it. I'm not going to shout you down. And just everybody just talking to each other about sports. It was great. I loved it. So let's try and keep that momentum going. I don't think I'll have another post that big for a little bit here, but it was awesome to see. So thank you all so much for that. If you aren't following me already, you can do so. Facebook.com. You can find me as the Mad Cave Podcast. You could also do that on Instagram. And then you can also find this fine podcast wherever you have already found it, as well as anywhere else that podcasts can be found. Just search the Mad Cave Podcast. You'll find my logo, and you'll be ready to go right there. So thank you all so much for being here, and let's dive into things. So let's start with the Big 12 championship game. I couldn't watch from the halfway through the third quarter on through the rest of the game. As soon as it was revealed that Bear Bachmeier was injured, personally, I thought Kalani should have benched him. It's a championship game, and you need your best out there to win. And an injured, one-legged Bear Bachmeier would have made for a great story back in the 80s. This isn't the 80s anymore. You can't win with a quarterback standing still in the pocket. Can't do it. Especially against the Texas Tech defensive line where all four guys are going to be drafted. And your offensive line where maybe one guy gets drafted and another gets a undrafted free agent contract, maybe. That's really where it was at. And they completely stifled LJ Martin after the first drive, which was to be expected. And just the game was always out of hand. From after the first quarter on, it was out of hand. As soon as Will Ferrin missed yet another kick this season, it was done. The team was deflated, and it's just you can't hide the fact that your quarterback is injured. And once a defense smells blood in the water, as we saw, you need to change something up, and Bear needed to be benched. He did. He never looked more like a true freshman. Even in the game in Lubbock, he didn't look more like a true freshman than he did in this game against Texas Tech. The moment was too big, which is fine. He was 19 years old. Happens. But the coach needs to step in at that point. So hopefully Kalani learned something there. Aaron Roderick learned something there. What it takes to win a championship, because you need a fully healthy quarterback. And if he's not 100%, if he's not even 80%, which Bear Bachmeier clearly was not, you got to pull him for a couple of reasons. The first reason being you're trying to win. The second reason is your team sees that, and sure, it might galvanize him for a drive, but once things start going sideways, they just look at the coach, they look at the player, and they go, why is he still out here? And I felt like that kind of happened a little bit. And then Texas Tech just went all out on the kid. All out. And there was no protection for him. So, top to bottom, BYU got beat. Period. End of story. There was not a single player on the field that was better than anybody in a Texas Tech uniform. Nowhere. So, where does that leave things? Well, the good news is that Kalani Sitake, as reported, not really reported, but like I predicted when all of that smoke was swirling about, oh, he's going to go to Penn State. Oh, the smoke is real. Oh, he's leaving Provo. He was never leaving Provo. No, he wasn't. He has said repeatedly this is his dream job. He is king in Provo. At State College, they would not allow him to make the changes that BYU has allowed him to make as far as like culture, like being able to teach about his culture and bring in events and that fourth quarter that they do and all that other stuff. State College was never going to allow that. Another thing, he's never coached really east of the Mississippi River. I almost said Missouri River because he coached in Missouri for a little bit, but he hasn't really coached east of the Mississippi River, which means he doesn't have any recruiting ties. He doesn't have any idea really what it's like to coach in that region of the United States. So that was a huge reason why I went, nah, he's not going. He's not going. Another reason is he preaches family football or family faith in football. You can't really preach that when you bolt. That ruins your credibility. It ruins the message. The kids see that. They look at you and go, yeah, right, coach. It's money, family, faith in football, right? And so you can't really preach that. You can't. Another reason is he's got a really good coaching staff at BYU. Aaron Roderick won Coordinator of the Year. Kalani obviously won Coach of the Year. So when you look at that in the conference, Jay Hill could have won as well with his defense. You don't abandon that unless you're Lane Kiffin. And Kalani Sitake is the antithesis of Lane Kiffin. So that's why I was entirely confident that he wasn't leaving. Anytime I saw the news, anytime I saw articles posted about it, that, oh, it's real, it's not real. You're a national writer trying to jump into a story that you don't really know too much about. Yeah, sure, the coach is talking to another school, big deal. It was a masterful job of Kalani renegotiating a contract he just signed, and he got a bigger commitment for his coordinators, so his coordinators got a raise. Let's see Lane Kiffin do that. And then on top of that, he got an increased budget or commitment to NIL funds for his team. Maybe that was his plan all along. I wouldn't put it past him. Kalani is a very smart man. And I think that was his goal all along. I think he sat down with his wife and went, all right, how can we make this better for our situation here? We're not really going to go, but let's just let the noise go for a little bit. And then we'll go to Brian Santiago, the AD at BYU, and go, all right, here's the deal. I'm thinking about taking this contract with Penn State, but if you want me to stay, here's what I want. And Brian Santiago was more than happy to say yes. Because here's another thing. If Kalani walked, he would probably take both coordinators with him. He would take a majority of the roster with him. BYU is nuts and bolts screwed at that point. Because I've said this many times as to the part of the fan base that usually calls for a head coach to get fired when the team struggles. You're not doing better than Kalani. You're just not. And as far as like offensive and defensive coordinator, you're not doing better than Jay Hill and Aaron Roderick. You're just not. I have my problems with Aaron Roderick. I haven't called for his job in years. I've called for him to do better, to learn from his mistakes, but I haven't called for his job. So, looking at all of that, Kalani was always going to stay. Is that going to be the case further down the road if another program opens up, a program like Texas or a program like Oklahoma, Oregon, something like that? Who knows? But for right now, he's staying. The reason I bring up those schools is because he has recruited in those areas. He has ties to those football programs, and not those programs per se, but to those high schools in the area. So it would be more realistic. So like if one of those jobs opened up, I would be more worried. But on the East Coast, nah, Kalani wasn't going anywhere. So yeah, BYU got trounced. They got shown the business, but they also were shown a couple of things. What it takes to win a championship. BYU hasn't been in a championship game since they were in the WAC. Yeah, it's been that long. The Mountain West, when BYU, Utah, TCU were all there, didn't have a championship game. And then BYU was an independent for all those years. So they've never been in a championship game, really. So that's one thing. The second is the boosters and everybody that writes paychecks to BYU, or not paychecks, but you know what I mean, writes checks to BYU. They see how much it costs to put together a team to be in the top 5 of the country. Texas Tech has given the Big 12 a blueprint of the universities that can afford that sort of thing. 2 of them reside in the state of Utah. BYU and Utah are able to do this. They both have billionaire backers. Okay? Utah's a little bit more behind because at the beginning of NIL, Kyle Whittingham was poo-pooing the idea, and he wasn't so much into it. Now he is, but it wasn't in the first place. BYU is a little bit more open to it. So they've got the backers. Anybody else in the Big 12? Colorado does not really have that money anymore. They spent it to get Coach Prime, to upgrade their athletics departments, all of that stuff. They don't really have that money anymore. It's been spent. Other than that, Arizona State, not so much. Arizona, maybe. But Arizona cares more about basketball. They always have. So when you look at the landscape of the Big 12 Conference, it's really these 3 schools. That's the hierarchy. It's Texas Tech, BYU, and Utah. The other schools just can't keep up. So the future is very bright. It is very bright. So as we move forward here, yeah, take the lumps. It was always going to happen, Cougar fans. I'm sorry. I never thought BYU had a chance in this game. They had about as much of a chance as anybody would walking onto the football field against a team like Texas Tech, which is not very much. So Texas Tech will probably get a first round bye in the college football playoff. Well deserved. Well deserved. That team is outstanding. BYU now knows what it's like to play in a championship game, what they need to do to get over to take this next step. It's not really a hump right now, but to take this next step, they know what they need to do. Kalani Sitake, Aaron Roderick, Jay Hill, Kelly Papinga, the coordinators and the coach, they all know what they need to recruit, what they need to get out of the transfer portal, what they need to do in game to adjust more properly when when everything is going against you. They know better now. So, yeah, it stinks right now. It really stinks. Talking about how BYU should be in the college football playoff, which I still believe they should. They won't be, though. When you look at their resume, their 2 losses are against a top 4 team. Miami doesn't have that. Notre Dame definitely doesn't have that. So they should be in over those 2 teams. Those 2 teams will probably get in because of the chaos that happened with Indiana beating Ohio State. That doesn't matter. Those 2 are going to be interchangeable. Alabama losing could knock them out. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, the SEC is going to get like 9 teams in. That's just how it is. But overall, while the morning stunk and it was hard to watch, BYU is only going to get better. I firmly believe that because Kalani Sitake is still a rather on the younger side of being a head coach. So, and he has proved that he can change. He can adapt. Same thing with Jay Hill and with Aaron Roderick. So this team will only get better. Will they be as good next year as they were this year? Well, time will tell. They're losing a lot of production. I think LJ Martin's going pro. He won Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. Not much more you can do other than winning the Heisman or the Doak Walker Award at that point. And I don't think he's going to be able to do that next year with a brand new offensive line in front of him. Bear Bachmeier's only going to get more of the lion's share of things to do on offense. It's too bad Chase Roberts has exhausted his eligibility, but he's off to the NFL. Carson Ryan is off to the NFL. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And then on the defensive side of the football, the defensive line does come back, but they're losing Jack Kelly. They'll probably be losing Isaiah Glasker, who I have many qualms with, but I'm not going to air them publicly. It's just stuff that I see that may be true, may not be true, but so he may be going pro. A lot of the defensive backfield's going pro, Tanner Wall. So we'll have to see. But at least, Will Farron's gone. From being a preseason All-American pick to missing 5 of the 7 field goals from 40 to 49 yards. Yeah, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. All right, so let's move it right along to men's basketball. So the Utes have run into some struggles. They lost to Cal Poly, Grand Canyon, and Cal. Yikes. But they did beat Ole Miss and California Baptist. I bet you didn't know there was a Baptist University in California. BYU and Utah fans both found that out this week. It'll be interesting to see how Utah performs against Mississippi State on the 13th. So this coming Saturday. If they can win that one, they could be a top half Big 12 team. They really could be. In the first year, that's pretty good. So we'll see what happens there. I'm not completely sold on the Utes here. And could you guys sell out your arena for once? Please. It is so depressing watching games. I know people care about Utah basketball. Angel Hammond, get your folks on the line, on the pipe here. Get some people in there because it's really depressing. So that's part of it. So Utah currently sitting at 7-3. Non-conference is coming to an end. Utah has Mississippi State, Eastern Washington, and the University of Washington left on their non-conference before they have to play Arizona for their first Big 12 game of the season. Yikes. Good luck there. Arizona is really good. But then they get Colorado right after that. So kind of like, yeah, we hit you really hard. We slapped you across the face with Arizona, but here's Colorado to make up for it. All right. So that's where we're at with Utah. Terrence Brown is a joy to watch. He's really fun to watch play basketball. So it's not like Utah doesn't have anybody to watch. So Angela Hammond, get your people in there. All right, Utah State suffered their first loss of the season against South Florida, but they had to travel across the country to play South Florida. I'm not too worried about that. Utah State is the class of the Mountain West Conference as far as I'm concerned. If you look across the conference, the only other team I'm really worried about for Utah State is New Mexico. New Mexico is pretty solid. Other than that, it's Utah State's conference to lose. Coming up, they've got Charlotte in Charlotte, then Illinois State before they start conference play against Colorado State. So I'm expecting a pretty big year from the Aggies. MJ Collins, again, much like Terrence Brown, he's really fun to watch. And so this team has got the guys. They do. Drake Allen averages 6.6 assists per game. Yeah, Utah State's going to be just fine. They're going to win the Mountain West Conference regular season crown. They might even win the tournament crown as well. That's my expectation for the Aggies basketball team. Stark contrast to their football team, huh? Okay, let's move it over to BYU, the main story of basketball in the state. Above the Jazz, the Utes, and the Aggies, AJ Dybantsa is the real deal. He truly is. Robert Wright is only improving as we go along. He's getting more and more comfortable in Kevin Young's offense. And so his turnover to assist ratio right now is sitting at 6 to 2.5. I'd like to see that improve to 7 to 2. So that's what I would like to see on a nightly basis from Robert Wright, but he tries too often just to take things over. Hero ball. That's really tough to coach out of somebody. Moving forward, that's what I'd like to see. As for the games coming up for the Cougars, they've got Clemson on the 9th, which is a Tuesday, and then UC Riverside, Pacific, Abilene Christian, and Eastern Washington to wrap up the preseason schedule. That's a lot of games in a short amount of time. So from the 9th through the 22nd of December, before the new year, BYU has 5 games. That's a lot for a college basketball team. Now, only one of them is against a really difficult team, which is Clemson. But still, BYU, Kevin Young, Brian Santiago, Tom Holmoe is the one who really put this schedule together. They stacked the preseason schedule with a lot of teams to get this team used to each other, to mesh before they dive into conference play, where, as I've said before, they get a pretty easy one with Kansas State, another kind of easy one with Arizona State, then it's the Holy War against Utah, and then they dive into the teeth of the schedule with teams like TCU, Texas Tech, Arizona, Kansas. You get the idea, Houston. So it'll be a tough road to hoe for this team, but I think they can do it. I really do. I'm not talking about like a one-loss season. That's impossible. But maybe a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. Maybe a number 2 seed. That's the highest they would have ever been ranked, or the highest seed they would have ever had in the NCAA tournament. And I called in the preseason before the preseason began, an Elite 8 run. I think that is entirely doable for this team. AJ Dybantsa and company are saying Final Four or bust. That's a good attitude to have. But with Dawson Baker out for the year, they're going to need somebody else to step up. I don't know who's going to step up on that bench. Depth is a thing when it comes to March Madness, and BYU doesn't have much. The starting lineup, the big three is the best big three in the nation, but the rest of the team, Akibakita as well. My goodness, that dude can jump out of the gym. Look him up on YouTube if you haven't. His highlights are awesome. But this basketball team is legitimate. They are. The worries I had after the Villanova game or after the UConn game, they're being assuaged as they play more and more together. They get more and more used to each other's game, and they're only going to get better as we get closer and closer to conference play when the games matter most. So I'm very excited here. I don't know if you can tell, but this basketball season is going to be a fun one. It'll be interesting to see what the Utes can do with their new head coach and all of these transfers that he brought in for this year. Maybe they can sneak a March Madness berth. Utah State's going to win their conference. I do not see a team in the Mountain West that can compete with the Aggies. I just don't. So that's where we're at with college basketball. Very exciting year for each school with individual stories going on. So I'll try to keep tabs on that for you all. The Jazz stink. There's your coverage for the Jazz. No, I'm just kidding. So the Jazz lost to the Knicks 146-112 at Madison Square Garden. And at the beginning of the game, it was 23-0. No, that's not me misreading anything. No, that's not your eyes deceiving you. That's just how bad the Jazz are. And why you should not waste your time, your money, even your brain space about this team. They're not trying to win. The player might be. Obviously, the players are trying to win. The front office, even the coaching staff, not so much. They're going to keep tanking until they can get that number 1 overall pick. I honestly think that's going to be the case. And if we look at the full standings of the NBA right now, they're not even the worst team in the NBA. In fact, they're 1 game out of the play-in. That's how bad a lot of the NBA is. The NBA is just not worth watching. Under Adam Silver, the game has gotten worse and worse to watch play. And Adam Silver isn't really the commissioner. It's LeBron James. Let's be real. LeBron James is the commissioner, not Adam Silver. And when we look across the NBA, there's not really any team I want to watch. I don't want to watch the Lakers. The Thunder, I'm rooting hard for the Thunder. Why? Because they're a small market team. Oklahoma City is barely bigger than Salt Lake. And so the NBA hates this team. The NBA wants to see this team lose. They want to see them fall apart. Stephen A. Smith probably couldn't even point to Oklahoma City on a map, even if you told him what state it's in. I'm not even sure he knows what state it's in. So that's where we're at with the NBA. I'm rooting hard for Oklahoma City. I'm rooting hard for Denver. And I'm rooting hard for... there's not really a team in the East I can root for. Maybe Orlando, I guess. They're a pretty small market. Milwaukee, I was rooting hard for until Giannis got hurt. But overall, the NBA is just a waste. And when you see score lines like the one that the Jazz had against the Knicks, 146-112, they have legislated defense and physical play out of the NBA. It is all soft. All of it is soft. It's not worth watching. Anytime anybody gets touched, they scream and whine to the referees. It's just terrible. So don't waste your time or money with the NBA. Don't do it. Watch other stuff. If you want pure passion for the game of basketball, watch college basketball. Pick a team. It doesn't have to be BYU, Utah, or Utah State. It can be whoever you want. If you want to watch basketball. Those kids play for the passion of the game. Yeah, there are a few that are playing for the paycheck, that are playing to get to the NBA. But with college basketball, it's the old argument that college football had over the NFL, is the kids play for the passion of the game. So do that. Do not waste your time with the NBA. It is soft. It is boring. It is all offense, no defense. There's no struggle. And the NBA head office's tinfoil hat time decides who wins before the season starts. Or they say, we want this superstar in this market, but we're going to make sure you get the first overall pick to make up for it. All right. So there's my rant against the NBA. And if you do like basketball, which I do still enjoy the sport of basketball, that's why I'm covering the college basketball scene. Watching the NBA is just not worth it. It's just not worth it. And Adam Silver, the wannabe Emperor Palpatine, no. All right, let's move it on to the Utah Mammoth. I know I don't really cover them much on this show, and I apologize for that. The Utah Mammoth are frustrating the ever-living goodness out of me. They beat a first-place Anaheim Ducks team, which is a very weird sentence to say, but they beat a first-place Anaheim Ducks team 7-0 in Anaheim. They then turn around and beat Vancouver in Vancouver's place 4-1. Then they go to arguably the worst team in the NHL, in the Calgary Flames. And I get it. Nobody wants to go from Vancouver into Calgary. Nobody wants to fly into Calgary for any reason. But you still got to play your game. And they lose 2-0. They waste a performance from Vitek Vanacek, who historically this season has been pretty bad. They waste his performance by losing 2-0. Vitek Vanacek, when he was in net in that game, only allowed one goal, and that was in the first 30 seconds. It was actually within the first 20 seconds. Yeah. You can't really blame the goalies in this case, can you? You can't blame them for the loss against St. Louis where you lost 1-0. I've got problems with this team. I don't have enough time left in this episode to describe to you the frustrations I have, the changes I want to see, and the moves that need to be made to make sure this team does make the playoffs this season. That is the internal goal. From the ownership group of Ryan and Ashley Smith to the GM, to the head coach, to the captain of the team. Playoffs or bust was the message. Now, they're barely hanging on to a playoff position. They are at 31 points as of me recording this before the Sunday games have begun. But they are only 1 point above the Chicago Blackhawks, who, by the way, have played 2 less games than the Mammoth. So essentially, Chicago has potentially 4 points over the Mammoth, which would put them at 34. Oh, boy, this team needs change, and it begins and ends with the power play unit. The power play unit is the worst in the NHL. During the month of November, the Utah Mammoth had a power play percentage of 4%. That means they scored 1 power play goal the entire month of November. If you or I performed as poorly as these guys did, or this coaching staff did, for an entire month, we would no longer have a job. And yet, the coaching staff remains unchanged, and there is no noise of any changes incoming. Why? You need to transition from insulating and incubating a young, talented core into a ruthless scoring machine. I don't think this current coaching staff, the way it is set up, is made to do that. So that's my main problem. I got problems with Barrett Hayton, Nick Schmaltz, John Marino. I got problems with some of the guys too. But that'll have to be a different episode because I need to get into my video game review. My first one in a long time. So this one is going to be about Dispatch. Dispatch is an amazing game. It's a story-driven game in the mode of the old Telltale games, if you remember those. The Walking Dead, The Wolf Among Us, Tales from the Borderlands, Game of Thrones even. So it's that kind of game. It's not really action-packed. It's not anything like that. You can have quick-time events where you press buttons and do certain things during cutscenes if you want to. You don't have to, though. And then there's a side game where it's a hacking game, but it's just like a puzzle that you have to do. So overall, it's a fun game. It really is. And then you dispatch certain heroes to solve certain crimes and whatnot. Overall, though, it's kind of like it's this superhero managing story wrapped up in a dating sim a little bit. because there's 2 characters you could try to date, all of that other stuff. So that's besides the point. The main points I want to get across here, because I'm out of time, is A, it's very mature. So parents, if your kids want to play this game, make sure your kid is mature enough to handle it. There's a lot of different mature themes in it. Drugs, sex, murder. There's a lot of adult themes in this game. So make sure your kid can handle them before you get them this game. If your kid can handle it, great. Get them this game. They're going to love it. So that's the first thing I want to call out. Second thing, the game's outstanding. Get it. If you're an adult, you're of age to be able to enjoy this game, just get it. It is well voice acted. It's got a major name attached to it in Aaron Paul. If you are into the YouTube scene, there are quite a few voices in there that you would recognize. It's a very fun game. I enjoy it thoroughly. You can play through it multiple times because it is a choice-driven game. So your choices matter. They affect the story. They affect what happens. So definitely get this game. It is $40 on Steam, I believe. So just get it. Enjoy it. It's like playing through a television series. It really is. And it's so good. So please get this game. Enjoy it. When you get this game, it encourages them to make more. I want them to make more. Maybe not a direct sequel like Dispatch 2, but something in that universe or by that same studio. I just want more. So get it. You'll enjoy it. Parents, make sure your kid can handle those themes. Or if you don't want them to see those themes yet, fine. Don't get it for them. But maybe get it for yourself because it's a good game. But that's the show this week, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. I apologize for running long for a little bit there. As always, I will see you next week when we spelunk back into the Matt Cave. Have a great week, everybody.